So, afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to this month's webinar on CoolCare. We'll be looking at managing inquiries, showing you a few things you might not know about the inquiries in CoolCare, how you can manage them and keep an eye on them on the system. As I'm sure you all know, CoolCare is here to make operating your care home easier, more efficient, and more profitable. And we're going to be seeing how to do that through the help of inquiries today. My name's Sam, and today, thank you all for joining. If anyone does have any questions or anything as we're going through the webinar today, you do have the option to do that on Zoom. You should see on your options a Q&A tab on Zoom where you can pop in there and ask any questions. And we've got a member of our team on standby to answer any questions that come up, anything you think of at all as we're going through. Feel free to ask and we'll be sure to answer it in due time. And there'll be some time at the end of this session if you've got any other questions while we're wrapping up to ask anything as well. But as for what we'll be looking at today, I'll say it is looking at our inquiries and a few things you might not know about them, how to easily track them in CoolCare, and how you can close off any incomplete inquiries in different ways. We can do that, and how to notify an inquiry and any information about it after the resident has been admitted into the system as well. So we'll be seeing a few things like that on there. If you give me one moment, I'm just going to swap over to my CoolCare system and we'll get things underway. So, as I'm sure we all know, inquiries there to help keep track on any potential new residents we have in CoolCare. It's going through the inquiry process and hopefully turn them into a new resident on CoolCare. So there's a few ways you can keep track of those, keep up to date with what's going on with them, and help to see what might need to be done with them in the system. First place you can easily see that is through your dashboard here on CoolCare. Your dashboard here can be set up with different widgets, and if you don't see these, you may need to speak with someone in your organization who can enable these for you. But there's some widgets related to our occupancy and inquiries that helps to keep an eye on the process and update you when things are going on and what you might need to do on a new inquiry. We have a general occupancy widget, which has a couple bits on inquiries down at the bottom. You can see there the total inquiries that are currently open in the system and how many of those are in our waiting list. At a certain point in an inquiry, they become on the waiting list side of things. And a few widgets here looking at essentially different parts of the inquiry process to see where we're at with them and what might need to be done. So for example, when a new inquiry is added onto CoolCare, they'll pop onto this new inquiries added widget. And they'll stay on there for a week after they've been created. So anyone who's got access to that can see any new inquiries that have been added onto CoolCare. And so, you can see what people are doing with them and easily spot some basic information about the new inquiries as they're added on. Then we have the upcoming inquiry tasks down the bottom left here. This one looking more through the inquiries themselves and see what needs to be done on them. So as you go through the inquiry, you can create these tasks to say what needs to be done, who would need to be doing what for them on there, and they'll then pop into here. And these will be the inquiry tasks, I believe, that are assigned to anyone in there. So you can see what tasks are going on for what inquiries, what they need to be doing, and when they would need to be done by as well. We've got the due dates for them on there. And it sorts it by the due date, so the most urgent one will be right at the top of the list on there. Then on the right-hand side here, we've got our planned admission. So when we get to the end of the inquiry, and then just as an admission waiting to come into the home, they'll pop into there to say when that admission is booked in for. And again, some basic details of the admission there, the new residents that may be coming into the home on that admission dates. And the good thing with these widgets is they're all updating in real time on CoolCare. So as soon as you make any changes to the inquiries or any parts of them on there, they'll then update to so everyone else has got the idea of what's going on with them in there. Nice and easy to spot. And a good thing to see, as soon as you're logging into CoolCare, you can easily see what's going on or what might need to be brought to your attention. Now, that's just one way of, say, tracking the inquiry information. The other way, actually through our inquiry section itself, you can find if you go to your care home section on CoolCare and into our occupancy management. There's a few things on here that can help. To start with, we've got our inquiries overview, and that tells us about the statistics of our current open inquiries, what's going on with them, and what's going on with them in there. So, for example, you've got your total number of inquiries that are open at the moment. And in a few places on here, it will kind of separate out potentially privately funded residents with those inquiries as well. So you say, well, 2 total inquiries, one of them is a potential private residence on there. It sorts your inquiries by their status, which is kind of whereabouts in the inquiry process they're at on there, if they're active, if they're in your waiting list, if they've had an assessment or not, and if they're currently on hold, which we'll come back to in a moment. We can say if we've got a planned admission in there. So in this case, I've got the one that's due to come in on the 25th on there. Or if they've paid a reservation fee or anything like that, so you can see if they've paid that through here. If we have any overdue tasks or events, they'll pop up in the next box there, and that will just tell you if there's any events or tasks that are past the due date as has been set up. They'll pop up in there. Ideally, that should always stay as 0, but of course stuff does get missed now and again, so it might populate in there if they do. And then you've got your average days. This one telling you how long on average the inquiries have been open for, just saying how long they've been sat there for in the system. In this case, on average, 5 for mine. You've got the number of new inquiries added within the past week, 2 for mine. Number of inquiries that have been deactivated within the past week, which I'll come back to in a moment. And then again, that waiting list broken down to U for unassessed, A for assessed, and breaking that down even further into potential private and all other funding types on there. So it's a nice way of kind of getting an overview of all the inquiries that are open in the system. If you've got a lot of them, you can easily see all the stats there at a glance and see what's going on with them from that. Then underneath that, we've got our 2 tabs for our to-do list and our inquiries. Your tab for inquiries here tells you the details of any open inquiries or anything in your waiting list at the moment. As you can see there, the 2 open inquiries I've got on mine, and you get some basic details for them in the list of what's going on and information we might need to know about them, when they were started, when they've had assessments, visits, admissions booked in for them, all in there. And then the other tab, the to-do list, if I click on that, tells us about any tasks that are upcoming. So where the inquiries are just the basic details for themselves, the to-do list is actually specific to tasks. And specifically, it'll be showing tasks that are assigned to you, specifically, in this case, myself, on there. And it'll tell me what the task is, which inquiry it's for, and who it's all relating to in there. And again, it'll sort them based on the due date. So the one at the top there is the most important one that we need to deal with most urgently for tomorrow. So you can easily see what tasks you've got to do, what inquiries are currently open for everyone, and spot them through that. And on the to-do list, you can use this little filter button if you need to show it for everyone. So by default, it will only show your own tasks, but you can change that for all users on there. Also, I've just got them all assigned to myself, so they're all just for me on there. That's how you can easily just track the inquiries and see what's going on with them. So you can easily keep up to date either through the page on here or through your dashboard if you just want to see stuff at a glance when you're first logging in. So that's easy ways to track our inquiries. Now, as I mentioned before, there are a couple of ways we can kind of essentially close off an inquiry if we need to. If there's one that we can no longer go any further with for one reason or another, we can see them on here as well. So if we click into an inquiry, if I go with this one here, for example, there's essentially 2 ways, well, I guess 2 ways an inquiry can be kind of closed off, and then a few ways of actually doing that for them. So an inquiry could either be on hold or inactive in there. On hold would be if they are kind of temporarily put to one side, say we're not dealing with this right now, but we might need to come back to it later. We can put it on hold, or we can make it inactive if we said, this one we can no longer go any further with. It's done with, kind of, permanently. Essentially, we're not coming back to it, so we'd make it inactive on there. The first way you can do it is on your inquiry itself. There'll be this status box in the top right corner with the status itself. This one currently saying waiting list assessed. And if I click on the little pencil icon next to it, I can change that status if I need to. If I click on it there, I've got a couple options, as you can see. So we can, as mentioned, deactivate the inquiry, which will make it inactive and say we can't go any further with it, that's done with, and we're not coming back to it on there. Or we can put it on hold, which would be the more temporary option to say we're putting it to one side for now, but we might need to come back to it later if they said, they're not interested at the moment, but perhaps in a couple of months' time, we might want to come back to it on there. So you can do that through those. Alternatively, you can also do it through your tasks. So for example, at this stage of the inquiry, all I've got left is the admission. And when you're on any stage of CoolCare with the inquiries on here, you'll have the option to add an entry to it. On most of those, you'll find the option to decline whatever's going on. So in this case, the admission, I can decline that admission on here, and that would, if I click on it, make the inquiry inactive automatically as well. So I might say they've turned around and said, actually, they're no longer interested. We've declined the admission. We're not going to go any further with this. I can then click the deactivate button there. And that will remove any open tasks we've got for at the moment. So the 2 tasks, the prepare for admission and the admission itself, will both be taken off of this, and the inquiry will be deactivated, saying that's done with now, can't go any further with, we have declined the admission. And when you do that and it makes it inactive, you can see up in the top right corner here, again, the status has changed to inactive on there, and it also asks you for an inactive reason, why this has been made inactive. And this will show up if you decline it at different stages like here, or if you make it inactive manually as well. And you see there's different options on there, different reasons for why that may have been made inactive in that. And we can say perhaps no room available. We've got no room, so that's dealt with on there. And you can always revisit that if you would need to. And then if I go back to occupancy management now, we should see, because that one's been made inactive, it no longer shows up on my list. And you can see now my deactivated has gone up to 1 on there. Alternatively, I say you can make it on hold. It might be this other one I've got on here is one that we need to put to one side temporarily and come back to at a later date. So if I go into this one, again, in the top right corner, you've got a status box. If I click on the little pencil icon, I can then change the status. And this one I'm going to make on hold. It does the same thing as deactivating it. It will delete any upcoming tasks. So there'll be no kind of open tasks left kind of struggling for this. And I can just pop it on hold. And that's all you need to do. Is just make it on hold. And now again, if I go back to the occupancy management page, it'll disappear from my list because it's no longer active. But you can see on the inquiries overview, it says 1 on hold there. Now, if you ever need to find those inquiries that are on hold, you can do that through your inquiries list here, just with a little filter icon. If I click on that, there's a few ways you can filter your inquiries in different ways. But the main one is here, the inquiry status. We can change at any point. By default, it's looking for anything that's active or in your waiting list. But as you can see there, I can change that to inactive inquiries if I need to pick up those inactive ones and check those. Or I can even go to the on hold ones in this case. And I should find there that one on hold inquiry that I've got. And if at any point you need to then turn that in on a hold one back into an active inquiry to say we're going to continue with it now, I can click into it on here. And we just go back to that pencil up in the top right corner from that. And, if I needed to, I could deactivate it to say, we've gone from on hold to actually not going back to it, so we can deactivate it, or we can reactivate it on here with the activate button. And that then makes it as an active inquiry again. And as you can see, this little box on the top has gone red. That's because we need to then add in a new task to say, where we are with this inquiry and what we need to do next for it on there. In this case, the last stage was the visit that was removed because it was put on hold. So I'm just going to reinstate a visit on there to say we've got one booked in for them again. And at any stage of the inquiry, you can add stuff to them, with the add entry button on there. And yeah, you can see on here the visits, any additional notes, any extra tasks, or we can even decline the visit if they're not interested with it. In this case, we're going to pop in the visit on here. So I'm just going to book in a visit for them. I might say it's this weekend and fill out the details for it on there. So, and that's inquiry essentially reinstated on here. We've got back to where we were after we put it on a hold, and now I've got something booked in to say what's going to be happening next. So if you do have any inquiries on hold and you go to reactivate them, make sure you do kind of pop in a task to say what would need to be done next on it. That way you're actually continuing on with the inquiry and it's not just sat there with nothing going on with it. And again, with those tasks in there, they'll show up on your dashboard. You can see it through that. And we can see it through the occupancy management page as well, through my to-do list. Nice and easy on there. So yeah, you can use those statuses to say to keep track of things and say where your inquiries are at the moment and change them at any time if you need to. Like I say, putting them on hold is more of your temporary option, whereas deactivating them is typically, usually a more permanent thing. But if you need to, you can also reactivate one that has been deactivated previously as well. So, if you did need to revisit them or if it was done by accident or something like that, you can always reactivate those through the same method, just using that filter and, finding your inactive ones on there as well. Very much the same way. I've got a few inactive ones in mind. But through that same status, that is where we can also revisit inquiries that have been admitted into the home. So once an inquiry is completed and been admitted as a new resident on CoolCare, you can always still revisit their inquiry if you need to check anything from that inquiry process on here, doing it very much the same way as we did on here. Using that inquiry status, as you can see there's one for admitted as well. So if I click onto that and apply that filter, I can then see a list of all my admitted inquiries on here. And if you need to, you can narrow it down further using your filters on here, or we can always sort the list by different options. If I say sorted by the reference number, I can find the most recent one up at the top here. So yeah, we can then revisit that inquiry and see what's happened with it in there. If I click into it, when an inquiry is complete and the resident is admitted, the inquiry still exists on the system. Like I say, it's just an admitted one on here. And so you can always revisit it at any point and you can check different stages, see all the tasks that are still on there, as you can see. And I can check over those tasks if I need to see any details from them in there. It might be a need to revisit the assessment and check some information from that. I can find it all in there, and it's still set up. You can also use this button on the top there. It says View More, and that gives you the full details of the inquiry itself in terms of the information you would need on there. And if you click the open these little tabs, we can see all the details regarding the inquiry, the prospective residents that is now, an actual resident on there, as well as the contacts and any documents that were attached to this inquiry with that. But all the stuff does come across to the new resident record in terms of documents, contacts, information on there. However, one thing you might want to revisit on here as well is this contact log on the right-hand side. So your contact log on the inquiries essentially is a full list of everything that's happened on the inquiry, when it was happened, and when changes were made to it. All the different stages of it show up on here, right from the initial creation all the way through to the admission itself, as you can see. So I can always check through that and see what was done, who did it, so which user on CoolCare actually, made this change, added this tasking, completed it, etc. in there, and when it was done, exactly the date and time it shows you up in there. So for example, the admission here, the admission was added on by myself on the 17th. That's about 20 past 10 in the morning. The admission was planned in for the 31st on there, but then it was completed on that same day and admitted on that date as well. So you can always see what's happening with the contact log. If you need to check anything from the inquiry process, who was doing what, who was keeping in touch with them, you can see that's on that contact log there. And if there's a lot to it, you can always filter it down with a little filter button, as you can see. So you've got the option to change, what activities we're kind of filtering there. If we just want to see the events themselves, if it's for a specific milestone, such as the 5 options you've got on there, and when that was kind of done, created as well. So if I say I just want to see it for my events, that narrows things down slightly. And then we can see just the visits, the assessments, and the admission. That's all we have. So yeah. And then with that as well, we can even export it out. So there's an export button next to the filter. If I click on that, that will just take my contact log, the entire thing, and it turns it into just a CSV Excel spreadsheet report. I'll load that up and tells you, just all your information from your contact log in one go and exported out of the system from there. So you can always revisit those inquiries, find out what's happened with them, and if you need to export that information out of the system as well directly through that. But yeah, just remember, whenever you're on the occupancy management, on your inquiries list, remember to filter it if you need to find anything previous on there. This inquiry status is your best friend on that, I'd say. For your inactive, your in hold, or your admitted. All done through that. Remember, you can click these little header icons at the top as well to sort it by those different things. If you want to sort it by the prospect names, by the inquirer's names, or by the inquiry reference number, which is just created automatically when the inquiry is created on the system. Yeah, that is all there is to it. So say there's plenty you can do on inquiries, obviously, as you know on CoolCare, but there's just a few things that might help you keep on top of them and keep up to date with things. I'll say that dashboard, very useful to have. If you remember, if you don't have any widgets on your dashboard, you may have to speak with someone in your organization that can enable them for you to show up on your system. But you can always change the order of your widgets as they show up on your system, so you can see the ones most important to you right at the top of the page whenever you log into CoolCare. And that's would be all to show you for the inquiries. Now, bear with me 1 second. I've just got to swap back to my presentation. Here we are. So, if you didn't know, CoolCare, I'll say our training team is always trying to help with your continuous professional development on CoolCare. Whether you're in charge of financing, payroll, rotors, tracking residents, or anything like that, you can work with our product specialists online or in person, wherever you want training happening. And if you didn't know, you may be entitled to some free training. Every customer has at least 2 30-minute free charge training sessions as part of the subscription to CoolCare. And if you want to find out if you do have that available and if you want to book it in, you can contact us at the training team to check your entitlement there. Send us an email, training@coolcare.co.uk, or feel free to call up our support team and they'll be able to point you in the right direction as well. That's 0113 385 3853 to give them a ring if you want to find out more. That'll be all for today's training webinar. Thank you all for joining us today. If you're interested, our next webinar next month is going to be on managing your rotas just in time for Christmas to prepare everything on there. So you'll receive an email to be able to sign up for that close to the time. And if you do, I'll see you there again. And so we will be keeping the webinar open for about 5-10 minutes or so, just to answer any of the questions people may have and help you out with anything else. But thank you all for coming and have a nice day.